I was preparing to do some weekly readings, and I was listening to a masterclass with Jane Fonda, and something is just hitting me to say, like, to put this out there. She said something very profound, and I'm pretty sure other people have said this, but when she turned 60, that was her third act within her life. And I do believe that. I had this, growing up, I've always had this like complex of like getting old and not being afraid of death, but being afraid of not accomplishing anything before death, because we all have to die. And when she said that, it made so much sense to me. Like, because it's true. Like, most people do die, like, God willing, they die, in their 80s, 70s. And when you really break up the decades, you have like the first 30 years, the second 30 years, and then the third 30 years that you live through. And I just wanted to kind of amplify that message to the people that, watch me, or people who don't watch me. Life really is, and I've always seen it this way. It's a story. It's a book. Like, your life is a book. It's a story. It's a movie. And when she said it like that, like the first act, the second act, the third act, like, that's really true. It's really true. And it also, it deals with lessons being learned and stuff. I got to bring it back to astrology. So every 30 years, Saturn comes and it returns. And Saturn, it rules structure and lessons and maturity and responsibility and being rewarded for actually doing what you got to do. And it rules, I would say, age as far as like maturity. And saying that and having that perspective, of every 30 years, Saturn comes back around, right? And people mature. If you look at people when they turn 30, they have these epiphanies like, yo, what have I been doing? That's what people are like, the 20s, like, you're just kind of doing whatever, right? When you turn 30, things start to make a little bit more sense and you really see what you've been doing all this time. And even throughout that second decade of the 30s, 40s, and 50s, that's when you really get to live life, quote unquote, if you're doing it right. But even then, you still haven't learned enough when you're talking to an elder. So I just found it really interesting, and I think it's actually something quite beautiful to really look at, when you're thinking about maybe what you haven't accomplished or things that you want to do. Life, when you're thinking about, just growing as a human. Remember, this is all, and not to minimize life, but this is all one big storybook, and this is your story to create. Like, even though you're the main character in your story, you're still the author as well. So let's say like aliens are reading our storybook, because that's something I used to think when I was little. Like, what if the angels or the aliens above are reading my book and they're seeing me do things on the day-to-day basis? Who knows if that's true, but honestly, like, this is your storybook. Like, for real, you have the opportunity to live and express and go through things. We all go through things, but someone reading your book or someone watching you live or someone hearing about your story could be so transformative for them, and we owe that to humanity. We owe that to pass that down just to humanity itself. You know what I mean? No matter where humanity ends up in the next 1,000 years, we still always end up going back to history to figure out this person's story and what story, what energy, what accomplishments, stages in life did they go through, and how can I relate to it and help myself out. We always do that. That's what elders are for. And even if you are young now, you're going to be at a point where you're an elder. So you want to have something to give and to teach, to generations to come. At least that's what I would like to do. So, yeah, I just wanted to amplify that message. Also, some of you guys can go check out the Oprah's masterclass. It's the Jane Fonda edition. I listened to the Stevie Nicks one. It was quite interesting. Listening to Jane Fonda's, and I haven't gotten quite through it because I'm going to do some readings right now, but that in itself was very, like, even though she had moved on past saying it, like, it kept sticking with me, and I'm like, yo, I understand that. Like, I completely understood what she meant by that. And I think it's very humbling, but it's also very exciting. Like, you get to create this story, you know what I mean? You get to create this story, like, that we call life. And just like the people in the Bible, like, there's books, within the Bible named after people, regardless of, what you believe and stuff like that. But I'm just saying that to say, like, that is a story in itself, and we're all a part of this big storybook. And I just think it's really cool that some of us get to stand out and, the ones that stand out always have the biggest struggles that they had to go through, but it's also things that we can all learn from on a very relatable energy. So that's all I want to say. You're a star. Everybody's a star. You're a star of your own life. So make it count. And I'll see you hopefully in these readings that I'm about to do. Bye.